And something else I heard you say on a podcast recently was on the topic of society being a little bit softer than what it used to be. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And it's something that I've contemplated as well. So I'm curious, A, to hear your thoughts, and B, what you feel that maybe a potential solution could be.
Yeah, I'm big on this in the podcast. I've been pushing this idea of do hard things, do difficult tasks. Like we've engineered this society for ourselves where everything's too easy. Rooms are perfectly lit at the perfect temperature. Uh, we're almost never, boredom doesn't exist anymore. It's like you're at a shop in a lineup and the lineup's like 20 seconds long. It's like, okay, cool. I can watch 2 TikTok videos in 20 seconds. Like we've alleviated boredom. We've alleviated extremes of temperature. We've alleviated, discomfort in the commute. Like our life is just too easy. And this has all happened in the last 100 years post-industrial revolution. But again, if you zoom out and you look at the totality of the evolution of our species, the last 100 years is quite a small part of that total evolution. Our ancestral bodies that we've inherited were not too well set up for the environment we now find ourselves in. Our ancestral bodies were designed to be exposed to extremes, to be exposed to difficult tasks. We're meant to lift heavy things. We're meant to go long periods without food. We're meant to, be exposed to light. We're meant to have our feet on the ground. We're meant to get cold in the water. And it's when we do all these things, they recharge us, I think, at like almost a level of our soul or a cellular level. It sounds corny and cliched, but it's only when you start doing the stuff that you go, holy shit, it feels like I should be doing this. Like when I get into the sauna and I spend like a half an hour at 56, 57 degrees, like it's crap. I don't want to be in the sauna at 57 degrees. The last 10 minutes is like, get me anywhere but this place right now. Like I do not want to be here. But when you get out of the sauna and then you're chilling out that evening reading a book at room temperature, it's like, oh my God, this feels amazing. Like the breeze coming through the window, there's a different appreciation for it. So it's almost like doing hard things creates a space for enjoyment. And I found this on the bike anecdotally, and it's only when I've sit to journal and reflect on this stuff that I started kind of piecing together this hypothesis. But days when I've been out on the bike and it's, I used to live in Toronto and I'd be out on the bike in -4, -5 degrees, and it's like 5 hours to do, and I'm looking down going like 5 hours in -5, like what the hell? My water bottles are frozen into the cage, my hands are frozen. It's just totally miserable beyond comprehension. And then I come in from the ride, have a shower, put on some warm clothes, get a duvet on the couch, have a sandwich and some tea, and watch Netflix. And it's like that Netflix show has never been as good. That cup of tea has never tasted as good. If I just got up out of bed, played video games all day, and then watched that Netflix show, it would be totally different experience. So the lens just completely changes, or the perspective on that changes. And that's something I've noticed over and over again. Like if I'm lucky enough to live beside the Irish Sea, and I'll try and jump in most days into the cold Irish Sea. But when you get out of that and you have like a cup of tea or a coffee when you get out of there, it's like, oh my God, this is the nicest cup of tea I've ever had, because you're shivering after it. So it's like doing hard things creates that space for enjoyment. Have you experienced that?
I have, and before I go into my experience, I want to ask you a question that I get a lot from, and it's mainly kickback, is that someone might look at you, Anthony, and say, well, you're experiencing these challenges with your mother's health, you've got a lot on, why make your life any harder when there's already challenges coming your way?
I don't think I'd describe it as harder. It's like, yeah, if you ever fly in the airplane, they say, in the case of an emergency, put your own mask on first. And, I'm not a good person to be around unless I'm centered. And this stuff centers me. Like if, there's me, my mom, my dad, my sister, and my mom's in hospital at the moment. And my dad, he's retired and he doesn't have the mobility and stuff that he used to. So it's like, okay, step up, be the man of the house. And it's like, well, how do you be that? Well, if I'm this like fat, shriveled up, low libido, low energy dude who's slithering around the place, it's like, well, that's not what the man of the house is. Like, it's, it's square the shoulders, make decisions, have confidence, have energy, have like a resilience about you that you can take some hardships, that you can take some hits and still keep moving forward. And like, it creates a momentum, like getting into the sea and shivering for 20 minutes. Like there's almost like a metaphor for that in life, because it's like you get in there, it's hard, but you're still doing it anyway. And it's like, I've never accomplished anything in my life that's just been smooth. Like, I'm on episode 520 on the podcast. It's like, how many of those episodes were absolutely terrible? Like, a lot, like quite a lot. How many times my microphone didn't work? How many times was I like hungover or sick or injured and crashed my bike, but still had to do the podcast anyway? Like, we need to move past adversity in life. You need to keep moving past it to get to anywhere that's worth getting to. I've never got to somewhere worth getting to without friction. So sitting in cold water gives me that resilience to move past friction. And I can take that down to other areas of my life and go, okay, well, this is a hard day I'm having, but it's not as hard as the time I crashed in Detroit and I had a collapsed lung, broke my shoulder, and had to drive 6 hours to the hospital in Toronto. That was a shit day. Now, this is not, I have a headache. It's not as bad as that day. And you can benchmark experiences against the other. But for people like, and I look at friends who are like, I don't want to pick on the real private school kids, but I look at some of my friends who came through private school, and then I had a brilliant guest on the podcast actually that answers this perfectly. I had Paddy Houlihan. He's an ex-UFC fighter, came up with Conor McGregor. They were like homeboys back in the day. If you want to talk about like a vision, we'll get into the stories he was telling me about Conor McGregor and vision and manifesting, which are unbelievable. But he's from a really working class area, like as tough as you can imagine, like one of the most working class areas in the country, and probably one of the most working class areas in Europe. So he said in the school he was in, you're in from an early age, and it's like adversity straight away. It's like a kid coming over, like you're 6 years old, he punches you in the face, your nose is bloody, you're going home and to your parents and you're like, I've got a bloody nose, and your dad's like, well, you know what you got to do, you got to fight him tomorrow. That's how you get rid of the bloody nose. He's like, it's kill or be killed in the environment he's in. He's like on the streets, in the school. So I contrast the environment he was in to some of my friends who went to private school and then they went to sort of quite polished universities, and then they're 25, 26 years old and they get in a fight in a nightclub, somebody bumps into them. It's the first time in their life they've ever encountered this adversity, and they get hit in the head by somebody, and you're talking to them the next day and it's like their world has ended. They're like, I was attacked in a nightclub last night, and it's like 25 years old and it's the first time they've ever faced any adversity in their life, and it's crippling for them. It's, they have, fear of going back out to nightclubs again. They have, social anxiety off the back of this. They have a distrust of people off the back of this because they haven't built that resilience. But you take someone like Paddy Houlihan, it's just like, it's part of life. I can take hits and I can keep moving forward all day long. I've been doing it since I was a kid. And it's an extreme example, but it kind of illustrates that we can build a resilience. It's a learned skill. And it's also a learned helplessness on the far end of that.